Hello and welcome to Millennium News Hour. I am Tanziba Naurin. In today's bulletin, we will get you detailed news from across the nation and the world. Let's begin with the headlines of the day. Walmart manager opens fire in break room, killing 6. US sending Ukraine 400 million in ammunition generators. Supreme Court okays handover of Trump tax returns to Congress. Accountant testifies Trump claimed decade of huge tax losses. Biden to extend student loan pause as court battle drags on. US renews push for COVID boosters as data show they protect. Republican Kylie captures California US House seat. Republicans try to stop Saturday voting in Georgia runoff. Oklahoma police says suspect nabbed in killings of 4 at pot farm. Most Ukrainians left without power after new Russian strikes. Russia-Cuba leaders meet in Moscow, honor rebel icon Castro. €100 million pledged to Moldova, hit hard by war in Ukraine. Magnitude 5.9 earthquake hits northwest Turkey, 68 injured. Protesting workers beaten at Chinese iPhone factory. Bolsonaro contests Brazil election loss, wants votes voided. Arab world reveals in Saudi win over Argentina at World Cup. And Japan gets 2 late goals to upset Germany 2-1 at World Cup. Now news in detail. A Walmart manager opened fire on fellow employees gathered in the break room of a Virginia store, a witness said Wednesday. 6 people died in the country's second high-profile mass shooting in a handful of days. The gunman, who apparently killed himself, was dead when police found him, said Chesapeake Police Chief Mark G. Soleski. There was no clear motive for the shooting, which also left 4 people in the hospital. The store was busy just before the attack Tuesday night, with people stocking up ahead of the Thanksgiving holiday, a shopper told a local TV station. Employee Brianna Tyler said that workers had gathered in the store's break room as they typically did ahead of their shifts. I looked up and my manager just opened the door and he just opened fire, she told ABC's Good Morning America, adding that multiple people dropped to the floor. He didn't say a word, he didn't say anything at all, she said. Soleski confirmed the shooter, who used a pistol, was a Walmart employee but did not give his name because his family has not been notified. He couldn't confirm whether the victims were all employees. The US is sending another 400 million in ammunition and generators to Ukraine, the White House announced Wednesday, and is pulling the gear from its own stockpiles to get the support to Kiev as fast as possible as Russia continues to target Ukraine's energy sources and winter sets in. Including the latest aid, the US has committed more than 19 billion in weapons and other equipment to Ukraine since Russia attacked on February 24. The new package of aid will be provided through Presidential Drawdown Authority, which allows the Pentagon to take weapons from its own stock and quickly ship them to Ukraine. The latest package includes 200 generators, an undisclosed amount of additional rounds for both the advanced NASAMS air defense systems and the HIMARS artillery systems the US has shipped to Ukraine, 150 heavy machine guns with thermal sights to shoot down drones, 10,000 120mm mortar rounds and another 20 million rounds of small arms ammunition, among other items, the Pentagon said. The Supreme Court on Tuesday cleared the way for the imminent handover of former President Donald Trump's tax returns to a congressional committee after a 3-year legal fight. The court, with no noted dissents, rejected Trump's plea for an order that would have prevented the Treasury Department from giving 6 years of tax returns for Trump and some of his businesses to the Democratic-controlled House Ways and Means Committee. Alone among recent presidents, Trump refused to release his tax returns either during his successful 2016 campaign or his 4 years in the White House, citing what he said was an ongoing audit by the IRS. Last week, Trump announced he would run again in 2024. It was the former president's second loss at the Supreme Court in as many months, and third this year. In October, the court refused to step into the legal fight surrounding the FBI search of Trump's Florida estate that turned up classified documents. Donald Trump reported losses on his tax returns every year for a decade, including nearly $700 million in 2009 and $200 million in 2010. His longtime accountant testified Tuesday, confirming long-held suspicions about the former president's tax practices. Donald Bender, a partner at Mazars USA LLP who has spent years preparing Trump's personal tax returns, said Trump's reported losses from 2009 to 2018 included net operating losses from some of the many businesses he owns through his Trump organization. There are losses for all these years, said Bender, who was granted immunity to testify at the company's criminal tax fraud trial in Manhattan. The short exchange amounted to a rare public discussion of Trump's taxes, which the Republican has vowed to keep secret, even if there was no obvious connection to the case at hand. President Joe Biden announced Tuesday that his administration will extend a pause on federal student loan payments while the White House fights a legal battle to save his plan to cancel portions of the debt. It isn't fair to ask tens of millions of borrowers eligible for relief to resume their student debt payments while the courts consider the lawsuit, Biden said in a video posted on Twitter. The moratorium was slated to expire January 1st, a date that Biden set before his debt cancellation plan stalled in the face of legal challenges from conservative opponents. Now it will extend until 60 days after the lawsuit is resolved. If the lawsuit has not been resolved by June 30, payments would resume 60 days after that. Biden's plan promises $10,000 in federal student debt forgiveness to those with incomes of less than $125,000 or households earning less than $250,000. Pell Grant recipients, who typically demonstrate more financial need, are eligible for an additional $10,000 in relief. More than 26 million people already applied for the relief, with 16 million approved. But the Education Department stopped processing applications this month after a federal judge in Texas struck down the plan. Americans who got the updated COVID-19 booster shots are better protected against symptomatic infection than those who haven't, at least for now, US health officials said Tuesday. Updated boosters rolled out by Pfizer and rival Moderna in September have been a hard sell for vaccine-weary Americans. Only about 13% of US adults so far have gotten a bivalent shot that targets the Omicron strain and the original coronavirus. On Tuesday, White House officials announced a renewed push for more Americans to get the latest shots. The first look at the new shots' real-world effectiveness shows they work, said Dr. Anthony Fauci, the nation's top infectious disease expert. Speaking at a White House briefing expected to be his last before he retires from the government at the end of the year, Fauci said, "What may be the final message I give you from this podium is that please, for your own safety, for that of your family, get your updated COVID-19 shot as soon as you are eligible." Republican Kevin Kiley, a state legislator who became a conservative favorite for his pointed and relentless criticism of Democratic Governor Gavin Newsom, captured a U.S. House seat Tuesday in northeastern California. With 83% of ballots counted, Kiley received nearly 53% of the votes to defeat Democrat Kermit Jones, a doctor and Navy veteran. The win will pad the margin of Republican control in the House. The GOP seized the majority from Democrats last week when California Representative Mike Garcia was re-elected and gave the party its 218th seat. With Kiley's victory, the tally stands at 220 Republicans and 212 Democrats. Voters want a new direction, Kiley said in a post-election interview last week as he awaited results in the 3rd Congressional District that runs from the Sacramento suburbs down the interior spine of the state. The House is going to be the vehicle for effectuating the change voters are looking for. Even with the win, Republicans will remain a small minority within the state's congressional delegation. Of the 52 seats, the largest delegation in Congress, GOP candidates had captured just 11 districts with one race still too early to call. The leading issues in Kiley's race mirrored House and Senate campaigns around the country. Republican groups appealed to Georgia's highest court Tuesday in an attempt to prohibit early voting this Saturday in the U.S. Senate runoff election between Democratic Senator Raphael Warnock and Republican challenger Herschel Walker. The Georgia Republican Party, the National Republican Senatorial Committee, and the Republican National Committee filed the appeal with the Georgia Supreme Court. They are asking the High Court to issue an emergency stay of a lower court ruling that said Georgia law does allow voting this Saturday. The runoff election day is scheduled for December 6. The time-sensitive legal battle began after Republican Secretary of State Brad Raffensperger issued guidance to county election officials that said early voting could not be held on November 26 because state law says it is illegal on a Saturday if there is a holiday on the Thursday or Friday preceding it. Thursday is Thanksgiving and Friday is a state holiday. Warnock's campaign, along with the Democratic Party of Georgia and the Democratic Senatorial Campaign Committee, sued last week to challenge that guidance. They argued that the prohibition on Saturday early voting after a holiday applies only to a primary or general election but not to a runoff. The suspect in the weekend killings of 4 people at a marijuana farm in Oklahoma was arrested in the afternoon by officers in South Florida, police announced late Tuesday. Wu Chen was taken into custody without incident just before 4 p.m. Central Time by Miami Beach Police and taken to the Miami-Dade County Detention Center, the Oklahoma State Bureau of Investigation said in an evening post on Facebook. The arrest came after a car tag reader flagged vehicle he was driving. It added, the suspect will be charged with murder and shooting with intent to kill and faces extradition to Oklahoma. OSBI also posted a photo provided by U.S. Marshals of the man sitting shoeless on a curb, apparently with his hands cuffed behind his back. Authorities said the victims, 3 men and 1 woman, all Chinese citizens, were shot dead and executed on the 10-acre property west of Hennessy, about 55 miles northeast of Oklahoma City. A 5th victim, who is also a Chinese citizen, was wounded and taken to an Oklahoma City hospital. A punishing new barrage of Russian strikes on Ukrainian infrastructure on Wednesday caused power outages across large parts of the country as well as neighboring Moldova, piling more damage onto Ukraine's already battered power network and adding to the misery for civilians as winter begins. Multiple regions reported attacks in quick succession, and Ukraine's energy ministry said that the vast majority of electricity consumers were cut off. Officials in Kiev said 3 people were killed and 9 wounded in the capital after a Russian strike hit a 2-story building. Russia has been pounding the power grid and other facilities with missiles and exploding drones for weeks, and the energy system is being damaged faster than it can be repaired. Before the latest barrage, President Vladimir Zelensky had said that Russian strikes had already damaged around half of Ukraine's energy infrastructure. Rolling power outages have become the horrid new normal for millions, and the latest barrage affected water supplies too. Ukrainian officials believe Russian President Vladimir Putin is hoping that the misery of unheated and unlit homes in the cold and dark of winter will turn public opinion against a continuation of the war, but say it's having the opposite effect, strengthening Ukrainian resolve. Russian President Vladimir Putin on Tuesday met with his Cuban counterpart in Moscow, where the two unveiled a monument to Cuban revolutionary leader Fidel Castro and hailed the traditional friendship between their sanctions-hit nations. A video published on the Kremlin's website showed Putin and the Cuban head of state, Miguel Diaz-Canel y Bermudez, deliver speeches as Russian military guards flanked a bronze statue of Castro. The late Castro embraced Soviet-style communism after taking a leading role in a revolution which in 1959 drove dictator Fulgencio Batista from power. He went on to defy a crippling US embargo and dozens of assassination plots during his half-century of rule on the island, before dying in 2016 at the age of 90. Putin in a speech underscored Castro's history of defiance, praising him for selflessly defending the sovereignty of native country and drawing parallels with Western sanctions imposed on Russia in connection with its military campaign in Ukraine. French President Emmanuel Macron said more than 100 million euros were raised at a donors' conference Monday to help assist Europe's poorest country, Moldova, which is suffering massive blackouts, an acute energy crisis, heavy refugee flows, and potential security threats from the war in neighboring Ukraine. Monday's International Aid Conference in Paris was co-chaired by France, Germany, and Romania in support of Moldova and aimed to achieve concrete and immediate assistance for the landlocked former Soviet Republic, according to the French Foreign Ministry. 2 previous conferences for Moldova this year also raised hundreds of millions of euros. But as the war drags on and winter begins to creep, its needs are growing. Broad blackouts temporarily hit more than a half-dozen Moldovan cities last week as the Russian military pounded infrastructure targets across Ukraine. Moldova's Soviet-era energy systems remain interconnected with Ukraine, which is why the Russian missile barrage triggered the automatic shutdown of a supply line. A magnitude 5.9 earthquake hit a town in northwestern Turkey early Wednesday, causing damage to some buildings and widespread panic. At least 68 people were injured, mostly while trying to flee homes. The quake was centered in the town of Golkaya in Datça province, some 200 kilometers east of Istanbul. The Disaster and Emergency Management Presidency said it struck at 4:08 am and was felt in Istanbul, in the capital Ankara, and other parts of the region. Dozens of aftershocks were reported, including one with a magnitude of 4.3. The quake woke people from their sleep and many rushed out of buildings in panic in the province that experienced a deadly earthquake 23 years ago. At least 68 people were treated in hospitals for injuries in Datça and nearby regions, mostly sustained during the panic, including from jumping from balconies or windows. A 28-year-old Afghan was in serious condition after suffering a brain hemorrhage, Health Minister Fahrettin Koca said. Employees at the world's biggest Apple iPhone factory were beaten and detained in protests over pay amid antivirus controls, according to witnesses and videos on social media Wednesday, as tensions mount over Chinese efforts to combat a renewed rise in infections. Videos that said they were filmed at the factory in the central city of Zhengzhou showed thousands of people in masks facing rows of police in white protective suits with plastic riot shields. Police kicked and hit a protester with clubs, after he grabbed a metal pole that had been used to strike him. Frustration with restrictions in areas throughout China that have closed shops and offices and confined millions of people to their homes has boiled over into protests. Videos on social media show residents tearing down barricades set up to enforce neighborhood closures. The ruling Communist Party promised this month to try to reduce disruptions by shortening quarantines and making other changes. But the party is sticking to a zero COVID strategy that aims to isolate every case while other governments relax controls and try to live with the virus. More than 3 weeks after losing a re-election bid, President Jair Bolsonaro on Tuesday blamed a software bug and demanded the Electoral Authority annual votes cast on most of Brazil's nation's electronic voting machines, though independent experts say the bug doesn't affect the reliability of results. Such an action would leave Bolsonaro with 51% of the remaining valid votes and re-election victory. Marcelo de Bessa, the lawyer who filed the 33-page request on behalf of the president and his Liberal Party, told reporters. The Electoral Authority has already declared victory for Bolsonaro's nemesis, leftist former President Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva, and even many of the president's allies have accepted the results. Protesters in cities across the country have steadfastly refused to do the same, particularly with Bolsonaro declining to concede. Liberal Party leader Valdemar Costa and an auditor hired by the party told reporters in Brasilia that their evaluation found all machines dating from before 2020, nearly 280,000 of them, or about 59% of the total used in the October 30 runoff, lacked individual identification numbers in internal logs. Neither explained how that might have affected election results, but said they were asking the Electoral Authority to invalidate all votes cast on those machines. Now it's time for business news. Today's New York stock close price is 15,545.52. The NYSE composite is increased by 63.76 points or 0.41%. Tokyo stock close price is 28,115.74. The Nikkei 225 index is increased by 170.95 points or 0.61%. Shanghai stock close price is 3096.9073. The Shanghai Composite Index is increased by 7.96 points or 0.26%. Hong Kong stock close price is 17,523.81. The Hang Seng Index is increased by 99.40 points or 0.57%. Bombay stock close price is 61,510.58. The Sensex Index is increased by 91.62 points or 0.15%. Now a look of today's sports stories. Overjoyed fans erupted in celebration around the Arab world Tuesday after Saudi Arabia's shocking World Cup win over Argentina. From Syria and Jordan to Gaza and Qatar, host of this year's World Cup, fans basked in Saudi Arabia's achievement, one of the biggest upsets in the tournament's history. Immediately after their team's 2-1 come-from-behind victory, Saudi fans who witnessed the match in person flooded the streets outside Lusail Stadium, waving their country's green and white flags while chanting and singing, and even hugging distraught Argentina fans. Qatar's ruling Emir, Sheikh Tamim bin Hamad Al Thani, attended the match and at one point wrapped a Saudi flag over his shoulders. The moment, captured in online video and widely shared, would have been unthinkable nearly 2 years ago when Saudi Arabia and 3 other Arab nations boycotted Qatar over a political dispute. In northeastern Syria, the war-torn country's rebel stronghold, residents gathered at cafes, cheered and celebrated after the final whistle. It was a pleasant change for the enclave, where millions suffer from frequent airstrikes and poverty. Now, World Cup football match reports. Another surprisingly strong performance by an Arab country at the World Cup in Qatar stifled the threat of Luka Modric and held 2018 finalist Croatia to a 0-0 draw. Morocco's resilient performance Wednesday came 24 hours after Saudi Arabia sparked the first World Cup in the Middle East into life by beating Lionel Messi's Argentina in one of the biggest upsets in the tournament's history. Tunisia followed that up with a scoreless draw against European Championship semi-finalist Denmark. Another World Cup day, another World Cup shock. Substitutes Ritsudon and Takuma Asano scored late goals Wednesday to give Japan a calm from behind 2-1 victory over Germany. Both Don and Asano play for German clubs. Before starting of this match, Germany's players covered their mouths for their team photo before their opening World Cup match in an apparent rebuke of FIFA's clampdown on plans to wear armbands to protest discrimination in host nation Qatar. The team lined up in the traditional formation before Wednesday's game against Japan, and each of the 11 players covered their mouth with their right hand. It seemed to be a response to FIFA's warning to the 7 European federations, including Germany's, that players would be penalized if they wore colorful One Love armbands as a symbol for inclusion and diversity. The 7 team captains had planned to wear the armbands. Spain claimed their biggest ever World Cup win and took pole position in Group E in a comfortable 7-0 victory over Costa Rica on Wednesday. Belgium kicked off their 2022 FIFA World Cup campaign with an unconvincing 1-0 win over Canada on Wednesday night. The result saw the Red Devils go top of Group F, with Canada in last place after the first round of fixtures. Let's have a look on today's weather chart. That's all in today's news. Keep watching Millennium News 24 for latest updates. Millennium TV USA and Millennium News 24 network is transmitted and available to be watched free for all at TVs such as Sony, Samsung, LG, Roku TV, Amazon TV and Apple TV. And also in all European countries and Australia, available with Sky Network, Worldwide Jadoo TV, Radiant IPTV, Worldwide Jago BD Network and Horizon Satellite globally. Stay connected with us for all types of informative and entertainment program. Thank you.